guys, how's it going? It's Wilt from RWBY Nation here, and today I am joined by admins Melodic, Cudgel,
Greetings.
Pyrrha,
Hi guys.
Mercury,
There's a tornado warning in my area.
and Blush.
Oh my god, it's Keiji Tang.
And today we will be talking about Volume 4, Chapter 10, Kuroyuri, the episode that sort of leaves right back off from Chapter 9, where Ruby and Jean are on their way to Kuroyuri to try and find help for Crow, knowing that the town was destroyed due to what Ren had told them before. But Ren and Nora are off traveling up the mountain as they did not want to return to Kuroyuri, and this episode sort of tells us why. And so starting off, I want to get everyone's introduction thoughts on everything that sort of happened throughout this entire episode, if there was any major parts that stood out to you, changed any of your opinions right out of the gate, and just overall what you thought about the episode. And for that, I'm going to start with Blush on this one.
Last podcast is the one I said we're probably not going to get that Ren backstory, and of course, next episode, heck, not even the next episode preview immediately shows us a young Ren. Gosh darn it.
And Mercury?
One moment in the show made me consider Lancaster as a real ship. My heart broke for Nora, and my feels were caught unaware.
Alright. And Pyrrha.
Also, Ren really needed to drop the accent. Sorry.
Pyrrha?
There's no amount of blanket nests that can make this okay.
For
Anywhere.
sure.
I am
Yeah,
too
this
emotional
was-
for crap like this.
I feel like that was a very felt
They need to have
emotion
fucking
for
sticker
a lot of people.
They need to put sticker warnings on this fucking thing. By the way, there's a lot
How
of
could
videos here.
you put sticker warnings on an online
Hero.
show?
Hero,
I feel like
what
the
did we say
thumbnail
before the
itself was
podcast?
enough.
They need to put a sticker on being like, yo, there's a lot of feels here. Enter with care.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
And Melodic.
Just to let you know, I'm around 47 years old, and this episode had me teary-eyed. If anyone from Rooster Teeth is listening, well done.
Alright, well, so we seem to all have a similar feeling about this episode. It was definitely a feels-heavy episode this time, as we got the big backstory for Ren and Nora, and we'll get a little bit more into that specifically in just a minute, but starting off into the episode itself, we open up seeing Oscar walking down this road as he has decided to finally do what Ozpin has been telling him and to go to Mistral, and I guess to fulfill this, whatever this destiny of his is, and we get him making this journey. And I'm curious if any of you have any kind of thoughts, like, why do you think he finally decided to go through this? Because the last time we saw him, he seemed very resistant to the idea.
Stuff needed to happen, and he was already kind of shifty, so I guess he just decided to hit the big red screw it button.
Okay.
That or... Go ahead, Barry.
Is it bad that I was so worked up about everything that was happening with Ren and Nora that I forgot Oscar was at the beginning of the episode?
That's
Dishonor on
perfectly
your
fair,
cow.
as I actually did rewatch the episode probably about maybe an hour ago, and I had remembered Oscar was there, but I pretty much had forgotten most of any of the story that had happened, so having to go back and rewatch it definitely, I guess, reminded me, like, oh yeah, it wasn't just sad times that was making me depressed sitting in my chair. Oh, there's actually story involved as well.
I remembered the character Oscar interacted with in his scene more than I did of Oscar and his scene.
That's fair. And bringing that up, we actually did get to see a returning character that we haven't seen since what, chapter 1
Their
Yeah.
introduction.
Yep.
of volume 4,
Awesome.
and we got
No, hey,
Hazel.
Hazel.
I make sure I finish the job.
Toxic.
Definitely
gonna
not
lie.
toxic.
I'm not
It's
gonna lie.
Tux's big brother. No wonder why he doesn't like you, Merc.
No, watch
I'm gonna
this
say
one. He doesn't
this.
like me.
I'm gonna say this right now. I watched the episode when I was like half awake at 8 o'clock at night, and it was on my Vita, so the screen was small and the filter on the screen hadn't kicked in yet. So I honestly thought it was Tuxin walking in.
Now,
Dude,
Now, as
he'd
we
be
are-
dead.
It's sad.
good grief. But as we were talking about, like, Hazel's, I guess, brief but important return to seeing him again, I'm curious, why do you think he's in this section? Like, wasn't his job to go talk with the
You're a con.
Supreme Leader Khan at Menagerie? At least I assume he's in Menagerie.
Did they say menagerie? Because
They didn't say
Never
it specifically,
located-
but like they said the leader of the White Fang, which I can only assume would be in Menagerie. But it's,
why
it's
would he be-
possible he's not. He doesn't have to be there.
I don't think he's there because he would be in really close proximity to Gira, and then that could also cause more. There would be more issues in Menagerie if he was located there. If
Maybe.
he's located somewhere else where everything is corrupt, no one can do anything to him. Like he
Sure.
pays off all the city officials, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe he's going the really long 8-month roundabout way to Menagerie like Blake did, and that's why he has to go to Mistral first. Although, honestly, I forgot what each of their individual locations of the main 4 were supposed to go to, so I just thought he was that was asked to go to Mistral in the first place.
And bringing up like where Haven is right now, it actually got me thinking about a couple things, because we've seen 2 of Salem's like big 4 as far as the villains, but they've both been sort of around a similar area starting off, like when we've seen them. So that it got me thinking, like, what if Salem herself and like her headquarters may be a lot closer to Mistral than we originally thought?
It's actually 3 characters, not 2. Because you have Tyrion pursuing Ranger, you have Hazel going through there, and you have Watt supposed to go to the academy.
Well, I'm saying 2 that we've seen so far, and they've both
Oh,
been in
okay,
this
yeah, then you're right.
like
And
Mistral
Cinder's
area.
homesick, so
Because
I'm
like
sorry guys, this stupid tornado alarms in the background.
that's all right. But something very specific that Hazel told Oscar after he, for some reason, helped him get the money required or get a train ticket. He said this specific quote: "Don't let such small obstacles block your path." So I'm curious, do you think this has some kind of bigger meaning, like maybe something that happened in Hazel's past? Because Hazel, of the 4, seems sort of like the least or the most hesitant.
Hostile.
he
Well,
honestly,
least
to me,
hostile,
Hazel
most
seemed
hesitant.
Hazel definitely seemed like he was definitely a person that is ready to take action and definitely one in pursuit, even though he was waiting by patiently back at Salem quarters or whatever we're going to call that place.
Mhm.
Bad Horse headquarters, can we call it that?
Legion of Doom.
We should call it Grimtown.
But
The abandoned Dragon Head continent. That's all we know about it. Maybe.
who knows? But that quote was
But
very
anyway,
interesting to me.
It
Go ahead.
definitely just seemed like part of his personality to do something like that. So, plus,
Yeah.
just because they're part of the main, he's part of the main 4 doesn't mean he's just automatic jerk or jerk.
Yeah, it may be possible that he is on that, I guess, bad guy team, possibly to just do with the fact that he may not have as evil intentions as some of the others, but it may just be because he is a powerful dude that, like, Salem needs that power on her side, and he's just there to sort of follow orders. Maybe he's not there to, like, just sort of be the big bad. He's there more as just a big tough guy henchman, possibly. But doing that, it was very interesting with this scene, because we also got Ozpin referring to him as, like, he is someone from his past, and he's someone to like
Not trifle with.
Not trifle with. And I'm curious, like, exactly what his and Ozpin's history might be, because Hazel was the one that had mentioned that he has dealt with the Silver-Eyed Warriors before. I mean, he said they, but with him specifically saying that, it brings up a lot of interesting thoughts and theories that could come out of it. And hopefully we'll get to see more with that. But that really, it was maybe two minutes of Oscar's story for this episode. So we got a little bit, and I think that's what we're going to start seeing a little bit more of here on out. So before we transition to the next part, I'm curious, what do you think will be the next stage of when we see Oscar?
I think when he actually gets to the academy.
Okay.
On a related note, you notice that there's a storm going on right where Oscar is. And then when we get into the mountains with Nora and Ren afterwards, you hear a storm, which says that Team Ranger is actually in a fairly close area to where Oscar is, probably on the other side of the mountain.
Okay.
Or it's a coincidence.
I say coincidence, because it's
it
like
might be
an
a coincidence. Yeah.
It'd be interesting if Oscar was, like, leaving the town that Ren and Nora are trying to get to.
That'd be cool.
Alright, and we are back. Pyrrha had to go take care of some things, but going right back into the episode itself, we are going to transition now from Oscar's side of the story, and I'm curious, is there any, like, before we got this transition period, what were your guys' thoughts at this point? Like, what, I was completely for sure that, like, I was blown away that, like, nothing was in the town itself.
I wasn't. It's been over 10 years. You know, this isn't Skyrim. You're not going to find a potion that's perfectly useful inside an old urn.
Says you.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I was more along the
gotta-
lines thinking of, like, that town was going to be something to do with Raven, and I was totally wrong on that.
Oh,
Had nothing to do with
Kuroyuri,
her.
or where
Yeah,
Oscar went?
Kuroyuri.
Oh, okay. I honestly thought
Yeah.
that too.
We're always going back and forth, so I'm only going for what's confirmed, and that was Grimm.
I don't know. I guess I just didn't want to assume, like, that Mark was a Grimm, which we later find out in the episode it was. But with this, like, they get to the town of Kuroyuri, and I'm talking about Ruby and Jean carrying Crow with them. They get to the town, and they are looking for any kind of thing that looks like it could help them, maybe get Crow better, at least stabilized to the point where they could find real help. But they're not having a whole lot of luck doing so. And this was a very brief moment in the episode, and it sort of led into the backstory section, which takes up the main section of the episode. But they're talking about, like, why Ren didn't really even want to come here, and, like, them saying this, Jean apparently knew about Ren's past, and
I would say that it's not so much that he knew about Ren's past as he was able to have a pretty good idea coming across a completely destroyed town that Ren wanted absolutely nothing to do with. This must be his hometown, especially when you consider there was also another town back in season 2 that both Ren and Nora wanted really badly to go to, and the attack on on Vale through the subway system kind of derailed that. So
Literally.
If I may intervene here, it seemed like ever since the dance in Volume 2, John has made an effort to try to know Ren a little bit better, maybe out of guilt for not knowing much about him at all when he tried asking him for advice, but it seemed to me that those two have gotten a lot closer off screen. In fact, I mean, heck, the last episode ended with both of them sharing a bro hug, so it seemed like those two have bonded a bit more. Kind of wish we would get to see more of that, but up until this point, the show's just kind of been ignoring Ren and Nora's past, so...
I didn't know what to think about it at first. This episode to me, like, I knew I was expecting all kinds of different emotions to hit, and to get sort of the information that, like, I can definitely agree, like, Jean and Ren, like, being teammates have probably come really close, so that definitely would probably explain it pretty well. Team,
so yeah.
And they both had to cope with losing Pyrrha.
That's true. And so they have definitely connected on a pretty deep level, so that's a good point. But going back to the transition of, like, where Ruby and Jean are talking about, like, why Ren did not want to enter this town, it immediately transits into, I assume, 10 years ago when the town was destroyed, and we get to meet the cutest little Ren. Oh my god. I couldn't handle it.
You're going to see so many cosplays that parents do of their little kids.
I know!
Nora.
I'm so happy about it. They're so cute.
Aren't they?
I've already seen a little RWBY cosplay, so
I
don't
like
doubt that.
little miniatures of, like, the older characters. I'm fine with, and, like, little kid versions. But Ren and Nora, oh my god.
Technically, parents can do almost a whole younger Team RWBY and half of Team Juniper right now. Unless they do more on Weiss, Jean, and Pyrrha in the future.
Well, it's easy to do 3/4 of Juniper, so...
Ooh.
Aw. Well, going from seeing cute little Ren talking with his mom, who I found out is named Ann Lee, or Ann Ren.
Ann Ren.
And his father is Lee Ren, but he's speaking with her, and shortly after, like, he goes off, he's trying to find a gift for his father, who is apparently returning home. So he has this cute little, like, stroll around town and looking for things, and then he comes across somewhat of a familiar sight, not necessarily with these characters, but something that has happened previously in a similar state in the past with Cardin and his team with Velvet. But we see at the time, it's like, as soon as it showed her, I feel like my heart just sank.
You're not the only one.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who had a flashback to Cardin's group, because it's like, it seemed like one of the kids there had a haircut similar to one of Cardin's crew.
I actually, it's interesting you say that, because I went back when I rewatched the episode. I got to looking at them and I paused it on them to see. It's like, are any of these guys familiar? And I didn't have enough time to really look too much into it. But if that were the case, that's ooh. All right, well, we get to see these three bullies picking on. I can only assume, like, a homeless Nora in her younger state, as she has stolen this loaf of bread and she's being picked on by these bullies, and Ren sort of just stands there and doesn't really do anything, and he begins to sort of become scared and run away when his father shows up and breaks everything up. And that was a side of Ren that I had never seen before, but it had to happen because we find out later on why. But this moment, like, through this entire scene, I was at the point where it's just like I had my fist clenched and everything, because it's like
I was squealing the entire time.
I was depressed.
I'm sorry.
I
I was
wanted
just
to
like so
deck some
excited to
fools.
see them and how they were.
I had some thoughts about Ren. From the way he's dressed, he's definitely not lower class, but he's not rich like we had assumed from hearing that his parents had gone on to the other village or the other town that was being built. His father was a hunter, not a huntsman, but it seems that he was middle class, essentially. And with Nora, while Nora was filthy and eating moldy bread, if you look at her clothes are dirty, but actually in really good shape. She's got a good jacket, she's got good shoes. So it would seem likely that her parents were traveling through the region, maybe as merchants or in some other trade. And then she lost her parents, possibly by bandits or the Grimm. And so Ren came across her as she's scavenging and basically starving, and that's why she's going for moldy bread.
It's possible. I don't know, because I've got a picture pulled up right now of young Nora, and you had mentioned like she had nice clothes, and don't know if I can really agree with that, as her pants are sort of patched and ripped. She's got bandages on her shoes, a bandage around her arm.
Her hair is really dirty as well.
Well, it's like I can agree with like the dirtiness side of it, but she's not really set up with proper clothes. So, like, it is still possible. Like, all these things are still possible, like you said, of how she could be a traveler and things like that. My personal opinion on it is that, like, she either may be an orphan or have, like Ren lost her parents in this whole ordeal, but either way, she is still on the poorer side of the spectrum, whether or not like she's full on homeless or like she's just trying to scavenge for things, similar to how like Aladdin in the Disney movie was, where he had to steal to survive. And so it could always be something like that. But going from the transition of when Ren first sees Nora and his father is telling him this exact quote, "Sometimes the worst action is taking no action at all." And that quote, I feel like, is sort of makes up Ren's character as like why he is the way he is. And it was such a powerful moment between him and his father that it sort of starts to shape Ren's, I guess, character. And that was a very powerful moment for me. And I'm curious, like, we also, for the first time, well, not for the first time, but I guess for the first time overall, like, where Ren is not only just, like, more passive, but he is almost scared to do something. And other than, like, when he was, like, asked to go to Kuroyuri, which I can understand, like, why he didn't, but I feel like this also sort of setting up the whole, like, him and Nora are going to come in and save the day type deal. But, like, it was a rough moment for me because I saw Ren, like, hesitate and sort of back away from something that he knew he should have done. And that was the moment where his character switched. And that was such a cool moment, and it was written so well. Like, I'm interested to see, well, I mean, it's not even really an interesting thing anymore. It's like, it's almost confirmed that Ren and Nora are connected this way. Alright, and we are back. We had a few technical issues. Merc apparently got caught up in Oscar's storm, but he is alright. And we're gonna jump right back in where we left off before we transition into the next part, we're left with Ren looking up at his father, and he's sort of disappointed, and I'm curious if any of you guys have any sort of final thoughts before we transition into the next, like, climactic section of this episode.
Seeing little Nora get bullied was Honestly, I think one of the more personal impacts personal connections the show has made so far, along with like losing loved ones, and I think bullying are like two of the biggest connections that people in this fandom could possibly relate to. Like
Okay.
it just hits home a lot. And Ren being indecisive and indifferent and scared of the situation, it makes you understand just like how big of a jump. Like you always assumed he was like from volume one, he was like the cool, collected, kind of regretful person because he was always stuck around Nora, kind of like how I am with you guys. And then now you're seeing how he jumped into that personality. It's weird.
Okay. And with that, we are going to transition into sort of an immediate tone shift, going from sort of a touching moment to sort of character development for Ren into the attack. And so we come back and Ruby and Jean are still sitting there. Crow is now off of the stretcher and leaning up against a tree, which still is telling us like he's still okay. He's still in a conscious state and everything else like that, which was an important moment to show for me. But we got a very touching moment between Ruby and Jean in this sense, because we can only assume like Jean is sort of like telling Ruby like about this like while they are searching for supplies. But in this, Ruby gets very emotional, saying like this is like her fault, like they're here. And Jean sort of reassures her that that's not necessarily the case. And like some people will see this scene as like proof for certain ships that are out there, whereas others will see it like as a different type of bond between the characters. Which is sort of where I fall along the lines. Like I feel like it was much more of like this is what like being a teammate is all about, and like having that connection between the members that like you care a lot about. And I'm curious what you guys thought about this small scene, but definitely a very important one.
If I can go first, it parallels back actually to Volume 1, because think about it, Jean felt like he was a crappy leader, and Ruby was the one to try to lift him back up and remind him that he is where he is because deep down, he can do it. Jean is basically saying the same type of thing, saying that because of deep down, she can do it because she believes she can make a difference. And that's what gives them the courage to follow her along. So it's touching going back to the Volume 1 leadership inner conflict that they have with themselves.
Okay. That is a very good point, and I actually hadn't given that much thought going back to Volume 1, but that's definitely for sure a callback.
I honestly only thought of it now because you guys brought up the idea of Volume 1 with the whole bullying thing. That was another thing that just kind of came up all of a sudden.
Okay. And did
honestly,
go ahead, Blush.
Yeah, I was saying it was definitely a great character building moment that I felt the both of them needed, especially John, to give out something nice and positive. As we all know, he's going through some very deep inner turmoils right now. And it's a wonder he even managed to collect himself the moment he heard Ruby say the words, "I'm sorry." So.
And that is actually an interesting point to bring up, because I was sort of in the same boat of feeling like Jean sort of had a bit of a, I guess, a mood shift at this point, because like up until that point he seemed still, I guess, angry about all of this, but I think like this moment sort of snapped him out of that into the point of he is there and his team is there to make a difference and to help Ruby because of what they've all lost, and to come together to do this. And like the moment was a very important one in my eyes, because it showed like Jean has grown so much as a character, and Like, the bad side of this that I feel like it also shows like we had already seen RWBY take a darker turn towards the end of Volume 3, but this sort of, I guess, digs it in deeper, showing like it's not even just about like deaths or events that happen that bring out people's emotions. It can just be straight up character development, and like the characters themselves are getting so much deeper in like how they are, that is also adding to the darker aspect of the show. And like I love that it shows a much bigger range of emotions between these characters, and that's great for writing and complexity for sure.
I have two thoughts. First of all, RWBY says I'm sorry, and it snaps John out of it, because the very last words Pyrrha said to him was, "I'm sorry."
Oh, it was just a thing she said in general, so.
Yes, but it was the very last thing he ever heard from Pyrrha. And this is also something has RWBY ever said "I'm sorry" before? I don't think she has, really.
I don't think so. Going from this touching moment between RWBY and John, we go into one of the, I guess, like, most emotional sections of Volume 4, period. And I, as well as I'm assuming probably some of you, as well as many of you watching this, got so emotional being put in situations like that, stressful situations where you lose someone very close to you, like Ren ended up losing with his mom and his dad. It was so emotional to me, and to see this, like, just turn, this, I guess what's been being known as the Grimm beast, emerge, and just how crazy he looks. It's just all these things piled up together. It made me feel so many emotions, and I'm curious, like, how you guys were feeling through all of this, because it tore me up.
I wasn't crying, but my heart was just like not having any of this. It hurt just to watch it all go through.
I just kind of remained still, focused, and observative the entire time. And because of this, the one emotional thought that went through my head was a bit of happiness, because if you recall back during our episode 2 podcast, I said, I'm calling it right now, flashback with Ren and Nora inside a burning town as the Grimm come and steal away everything. And guess what? There was embers in the air. I called it.
I do remember you talking about that, so yeah, I'll have to give that to you, and you definitely called that.
And then Knuckle V Grimm took everything away.
Nicola V.
Nicola V.
His name is Harry the Horseman. We've been over this
Not also Nicola V.
I don't know if I was a part of this conversation.
Is this about a duel, Han?
Was this something that came up in the spoiler chat?
I want to say a small call out to Admin Flint. He knew the mythology. I called Nicola V first because I have decades of running D&D and Pathfinder games behind me, and I recognized that from the artwork that Paizo put out in Rain and Winter. And that's the only way I knew what it was. He actually knew the mythology, so call out to Flint.
Speaking of which, Wilt, you're just going to have to post a picture that we found in the spoiler chat for the viewers here, because a Knuckle V, or whatever it's pronounced, is pretty scary looking.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. But speaking of the Beast himself in this episode, he is, like, even though it may not be as menacing as what you guys are talking about with the Nuclear V, it is still, like, menacing looking. It is some type of, like, rider with, like, this weird wolf slash horse faunus, or not faunus, grimm beast that it's it's just creepy looking. And when we first see it, it doesn't look that big. And then later on when we see it, as Ren and Nora are under the sort of porch looking house, it is a lot bigger than what it originally seems. But this thing, like, seeing it either tells me, all right, this is going to be the big finale fight for this season, and if they figure out a way to top this before the finale, like the fight with this thing, that's gonna be ridiculous.
I will say, if Crow dies, if Crow does not end up dying this volume, gotta say, fighting this thing wouldn't be a bad way to go.
I second that.
That's true. If Crow were to go out to this, it would be, I feel like that would be much more appropriate than dying from poison of Tyrion. It's a much
or just a
better
simple
fit.
Grimm horde.
Yeah.
I think
But
we
there
got
is-
enough pictures for this.
Speaking about the fight with this thing, because it's going to happen. They're not going to tease this of it going towards the city near the end of the episode and not fight it before the finale. It'll just be a matter of, will this be the fight of the volume, or will something top it? But with the fight, with this, whatever it is, I'm curious to know if you think Ren might do something with that dagger that he was given.
You've never seen him
Actually,
use it before.
well,
It may come back.
Speaking of which, because we danced through that entire second half of, or pretty much the entire bit of the collapse of what's it called?
Kuroyuri.
What's the name of this? Yeah, with the collapse of Kuroyuri. Something that I noticed immediately about the dagger is, the shape of that blade is familiar. And then I realized, oh wait, Ren carries 2 of those shaped daggers now as Uzis.
Yeah, I took that.
I want
notice.
to know if he actually
Okay.
sews the original blade on himself, not integrated into the weapons. You know what I mean?
With his modern outfit, it would probably be easier to hide it somewhere in his back, but with his previous outfits, I'd say there isn't much room to hide a dagger like that.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, he had his guns in his sleeves in the previous volumes. It wouldn't be hard to conceal a knife in the same manner.
Yeah, he has hammer space.
But I think
What he just hides it behind the back of his hair.
I can see it.
With Ren, anything's possible. I mean, he's a freaking ninja.
He's a
But
ninja that
it
can't
was-
keep up with Nora.
It was just interesting thought that I had, like, seeing that. It's just like, because the one of the biggest things in RWBY has always been the weapons, and like each weapon has some kind of significance to it, and I don't know, it's just, it was an interesting thought that I had, and it could mean nothing. It could mean, like you said, that he maybe just integrated that style of weapon into his guns, to sort of like
I
stay
feel
connected with his
bad that I
father.
Honestly, I feel bad during the earlier part of the episode when Ren was offered the wooden hammer and I didn't pick that up right away.
Either.
I thought about it, but it wasn't until I saw Nora that I really made that connection. The sort of big turning moment for Ren during the attack was after the house that he's in collapses on his mother. I can only assume immediately kills her. His father
And she
is,
gave the most hopeful words ever.
yeah.
Hope spot. Hope spot.
I feel like that's
Crushed
a bit
by
of a
optimism.
that's sort of a similar thing. Like the first thing that came into my head when that happened, it gave me flashbacks to Attack on Titan.
Like, Ren's mom should have just said, might as well have said at that moment, things can't get any worse from here.
Or something. But going into the next section, Ren's father basically just gives him the dagger, tells him to run, and tells him some some key words that like sort of makes up Ren's character as we know him now. And we got to see like his father is fighting for his life, shooting off every last arrow he has point blank at this beast while Ren is running away, probably not even getting to see like the fate that happened to his father, but he's just running and he's distraught, he's emotional, and all of these other things. And we got to see him unlock his semblance and his aura, and like I feel like that's a big deal for someone so young like he is.
Like in this moment of emotional distraught where he needs a hope of light, his aura and semblance unlocks, and it responds with, "Let me shelter your pain." And by the way, if his semblance is what we speculated to be, which seems to be emotional suppression, that seems like the greatest semblance to have when fighting something like the Grimm.
And I feel like it only plays into the fact of like he's a ninja. He can literally hide from his enemy.
Yeah.
It
Definitely
just
plays
fits
more
so
into
well.
a part of definitely plays more into the part of he doesn't want to face the Grimm that much, especially big things like the Knucklevi.
Well, like the thing is though, when this happens and he unlocks his aura and his semblance, like I think it did more than just unlock this ability. Like his entire personality seemed to change at that exact moment. And
as I said, it seemed to be like an emotion suppressor, which would also help him calm down and think more.
And maybe, and that would also explain like why he was able to sort of focus when Tyrion came in earlier in this volume, and he sort of like felt him coming like before any of the others, because like if he is able to like suppress all of these things and focus that much, it would make a lot more sense for that. But during this switch, he sees Nora, and that's sort of what immediately just sets the entire thing off. And he goes into Nora's aid, and god dang it, if I wasn't like already like done crying at this point, I think I started again.
Yeah.
And I specifically remember like I yelled out, like, thankfully I think I was alone in my house at the time, but I just yelled out like, "God dang it, Rooster Teeth, why do you do this to me?"
It seems Wilt
know.
and I are total opposites when reacting to this stuff. Like,
I-
actually, you know what? We're like two sides of Ren whenever we see something depressing. Like,
I am an
Pyrrha gets shot in
emotional
the heart,
person, damn it.
Like, Pyrrha gets shot in the heart, he starts emotionally bawling down, I just start emotionally suppressing and saying, nope, I'm just gonna remain as much of a blank as possible.
I can't remain blank whenever there's anything like that hits me, like specifically whether it's an emotional moment or a touching moment or
Well,
just...
you're the little Ren who didn't unlock his semblance then, and I'm the little Ren that did.
I don't care. I am emotional. I deal with it. I can't be as like emotionless as you or an edgelord as Mercury. I'm a weeping ball of mush when it comes to this stuff.
Two things I want to talk about. One, thank you for that compliment. Two, for those who are wondering what Wilt is trying to get at, I'm pretty sure he's trying to get at the instrumental version of Boop that was playing when Ren was shielding Nora.
Oh, I didn't even notice that! Ah!
This is what happens when you get emotional and don't focus.
Shut up! I don't need your logic.
I'll be honest, the first time watching through, I didn't notice it. It was after Pyrrha mentioned it, and then I watched it again today that I caught it.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to watch it again.
It's a good episode. It's worth watching a half
I
dozen
know,
times.
but there's certain episodes that it's so hard for me to watch again, even though I've rewatched all of volumes 1, 2, and 3 probably 10 times at this point. It's hard.
I mean, I'll be honest, I watched a couple other episodes today from this volume, and I forgot how cute RWBY sounded, so, you know, it's not all that bad.
I could never get that high-pitched.
This episode was definitely a roller coaster of emotions for me, and I'm sure some other people out there felt the same, and not everyone can be as just blank-faced as a few other admins during this kind of stuff, but they have a little bit more...
Don't worry, Wilt. I felt your pain too.
Okay.
I felt it too. You're not alone.
And there are definitely some other moments where it's like, I may not, like, get to the point where it's like, this episode, this entire section, like, ever since the backstory started, I was one of three things. I was blank-faced and, like, jaw-dropped of, like, what I was seeing in front of me. I was yelling at my screen, hoping that, like, things weren't as bad as it seemed, or I was just like, I need a hug.
I was giggity when I saw Nora getting bullied. It's like, aw, she's so cute, and Ren's going to have his Aladdin.
That was one of the few moments where I was just like, I need to give Nora a hug!
Well, I was fine during that moment because I thought Ren was going to be Aladdin, and no, he didn't. I'm thinking, oh, whoops, I guess not yet.
Yeah.
Ren had one job.
And he did it while the town was on fire.
Yeah.
Good job.
At least well, he sort of had two jobs. He only just did one of them.
Hey, as we saw with Cardinal in the future, he definitely doesn't stick to that even.
Well,
Back to what I said earlier, just break the legs.
Going from, like you guys said, of how Ren came to, like, Nora's aid, and, like, all of this stuff happened, we go back to a section that we mentioned earlier of the hammer, and oh my god, Rooster Teeth loves just if something doesn't hit you hard enough, like, they're gonna write in something that they know will, and that was one of those moments for me. It's just like
where Boop started playing.
Yes.
I'm honestly mad at myself that I missed that. Because normally the music is something that I am very, like, in tune with this show, and the fact that I missed that honestly just bugs me to myself, and I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that 2 or 3 times now just to make up for the fact that I missed it already. But he hands Nora this little wooden hammer, and he says something that has been repeated a few times throughout the series of how they will keep each other safe. And god dang it, I almost had to pause the episode.
At that moment, everyone's minds were just, yes, this is it. This is how you do things perfectly.
Damn it, I'm getting teary-eyed now.
Hey, don't worry, you're not the only one.
Shall we wrap up the episode with Back in the Present?
I feel like that's a proper way to do things, and going from that, we immediately transition back to Nora and Ren in the present time as they are making their way up the mountain, and they find this cave in this side of the mountain, and Nora mentions, like, wind is coming through it, and a very disturbing sight awaits them in this cave, and a collection of weapons, and I can only assume this had to be, well,
it's a trophy room.
Yeah, basically, it's a trophy slash, I hope God not feeding room, because that's a bit morbid. But
well, you say grimm blood. I think it's made. Sorry if I'm interrupting.
Go ahead.
I think it's more of. It's probably been attacked multiple times, not only when it attacks people, but when they retaliate. So that's why you see all the blood puddles all across the cave, and you see all the weapons. Like, I don't think people would be able to get close enough to stab it with a sword unless they surprised it inside its own cave, you know?
Okay.
In which case, you'd think they would get a weapon like Nora's for situations like that.
They may not have access to dust.
Or like a lot of these weapons seem like super basic and everything else, so you probably assume like these were just village people or just low class warriors who were trying to defend themselves, a militia maybe. It's like you don't really see too many weapons that look to belong to any kind of huntsman. And I'm sure like it has probably killed a couple huntsmen over its years. But like the majority of these things, it's hard to say. Hey guys, sorry about that again. We actually picked up Pyrrha again, so she is back with us now to finish off closing for this episode. But jumping right back in where we left off, Ren and Nora have entered this cave, and they notice the footprint of this unnamed grimm right now. There's plenty of nicknames out there, but for right now, he's just gonna be referred to by me as the Beast. But they see him exiting the cave, and they go to this cliffside to see the trees being moved, and Ren and Nora immediately know, like, what is happening, because it is going towards the city of Kuroyuri. And this is the moment where it's like, alright, they have to make a decision of, do they go back to Kuroyuri or not? And I'm curious, like, how... do you think, like, this is going to be the end of any characters, or do you think, like, this is going to be, maybe we may not even get to see this again until the finale, possibly, because there's only 2 episodes left. And okay. It's interesting to think about, but I want to know your guys' opinions on, like, what do you guys think we're going to see with the next episode, and how this has sort of closed up, and just what were you feeling when you saw, like, their reactions to what they have just seen?
Well, starting off with how I think this is going to go, if this is layered anything like last volume, then the next episode might be the one where we actually don't start right away with Kuroyuri, or perhaps just a little bit of what's happening on Ranger's side. But I think maybe the next episode's just going to be a big wrap-up, or at least conclusion towards everyone's side, and a lot of what's going to happen next with Team Ranger might be during the finale. But okay. Either way, all I'm saying is that right now I have my deck of tarot cards out. I'm reading the events of Kuroyuri, and the only card I'm getting is death. So take of that what you will, whether that means the end or change.
Well, we're going with change because death is not an option. I like my solitude.
No. We kill the Nucleobi.
His name is Harry.
Knuckles and Nucleobi.
Why not just call him Nick?
If Crow is to die, he would die here, unless during the finale fight with this thing, Raven intervenes. For all we know, she could possibly intervene, and that would be her one time saving him, possibly. But
okay,
with all hope, nothing's gonna happen to Ranger except Crow dying, if that actually happens. And then I'm gonna go with what Blush said, actually. Like, next episode wraps up everyone else, because, like, Yang really, I don't think has much to wrap up, because she's still just recovering. Her story's, like, done. Weiss needs to wrap up her side, Blake needs to wrap up her side, and then it leaves us Ranger and Oscar, which they can kind of do in the next 2 episodes.
I'm really hoping that by the finale, it's everyone on their own paths finally moving away.
Okay.
Like, Weiss leaves her castle, Yang leaves home, and, well, I guess Blake would have to leave home too. Assuming we don't get any more Bossing Say plot lines.
Maybe her parents go with her to go back and fight.
Either way,
this crap.
We're wrapping up this episode, and for this podcast, I want to get everyone's final thoughts and like, even though we've sort of talked about it a little bit, is there anything anyone would like to add to what we've seen so far? And just any big things that we might have missed over this podcast, and anything that you'd like to bring up, or jokes or anything that you may not have gotten to say ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And for that, I'm going to start with Melodic Cudgel on this one.
Arrow, Black Arrow, I have saved you to the last. You have never failed me, and I've always recovered you. I had you from my father, and he of old. If ever you came from the forges of the true king under the mountain, go now and speed well.
And Pyrrha.
Well, I kind of missed like 90% of the podcast, so
Was there
I think-
anything for you specifically? Yeah, like, is there anything like you think you wanted to have mentioned that may not have gotten mentioned, or even if it did get mentioned, like just specifically to you that you want to bring up before we end this one?
Did anybody else notice that when they were walking into the Beast's lair, that the first thing that really draws your eye is a hammer that looks a hell of a lot like Mjolnir, or his actual hammer?
I did not. I was too busy with the blood.
With that, actually, I did see what you were talking about, and I actually saw two of them. There was one like directly in the middle of the screen, and I've got it pulled up right now, but there was actually a couple of them, so I feel like that it may have...
But I still like the fact that the design is very reminiscent of Mjolnir.
Oh yeah, it's a cool design. It's like that war hammer, just big square hammer that's very, like, recognizable.
It's kind of like
I should
an
say.
inverse of a maul, if that makes any sense.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I think my other favorite thing is if you're listening really close, you can hear Boop playing in the background with
That
Ren
got
and Nora.
mentioned, and I've already said, like, I am pissed off at myself because I didn't hear it.
Dirk didn't hear it the first time either.
I said that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to go back as soon as this podcast is over and rewatch it 2 or 3 times just to hammer it into my brain. Like, you missed this. This is your fault.
Oh.
Fair
Hammer.
feels.
To be fair, wasn't even trying to make that reference, but glad I did now.
I'll take full responsibility.
I am. That is mine. I did that. My brain made that up.
Moving on.
Moving on. That's really all I have.
All right, and then
I'm repeating
Mercury.
a bunch of stuff.
I have several things to say. One, if Hazel wasn't a villain, he would be a great, deep voice, emotional, motivational speaker. Not emotional, motivational. The Ruby and John moment tempted me to start shipping Lancaster, but I enjoyed the moment for what it was, and I really liked it. After seeing this episode, the Renora ship is going to live on regardless of if they live or die. It's just going to continue.
Yep.
And this I wanted to say earlier for the Oscar moment, and I think Pyrrha is going to get a big kick out of this. The music that should have been playing when he was walking was I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's only me and I walk alone.
Na, na,
But does Merc really walk alone, or does he just kind of hobble along?
na.
I'll have you know I walked this empty street on a boulevard of broken dreams.
More
And
like
it's where
broken
the
legs, but okay.
Between the vines, what's fucked
Alright.
up and everything's alright.
We're
not
gonna
hearing
finish
it.
up.
Vital signs, signs
I regret singing.
I walk.
All right, well, we got
Yeah.
the Green Day reference out of the way, so we're gonna go ahead and finish up with Blush's final thoughts.
Looking at my tarot cards again, and the death one is just spinning from right side up to upside down and back and forth, and I usually know what this means, so
Yeah,
I'm
you're
good.
gonna die.
I'm gonna crawl through this internet connection, and I'm gonna burn your entire house down.
Says you
Oh gosh.
apathetic edge. dick.
Take away everything he loves.
All right, well, this has
I
been.
just got my RWBY Vital figures.
Burn them.
Well, this has definitely been an interesting podcast with a few technical issues. Hopefully, next week will run a little bit smoother. But this has been the RWBY Nation podcast, Volume 4, Chapter 10, Kuroyuri, with admins Wilt, with Melodic Cudgel.
Give me now leave to leave thee.
Pyrrha.
Sorry, I disappeared.
Mercury.
His name is Harry the Horseman, and henceforth it shall always be called that.
And Blush.
121 guns.
Alright. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure to do that. We have podcasts coming out weekly, as well as even more content coming out here soon. If you are sort of finding this randomly on the spans of the internet and do not know who we are the RWBY Nation. We are a fan-run RWBY page over on Facebook. You should go check us out. We post daily content of all different types, and it's a lot of fun. If you have anything you'd like to say to us personally, you can either message us through the Facebook or comment below in the YouTube. But this has been a fun one, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Take care.